The notification came at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, while Petra Whitmore was standing in her kitchen in Oakville, still wearing her coat, a grocery bag in each hand, wondering if she had remembered to buy the oat milk her daughter kept asking for. She hadn't even taken her boots off yet. The ping was from Instagram, nothing unusual. She got dozens a day. PR packages, brand tags, the occasional message from someone who recognized her from a conference. She set the bags down on the counter, pulled out her phone out of habit, and tapped the notification. It was a story, a public account she had never followed. Someone had tagged it with her husband's name. She stood there for a long moment. The groceries were still on the counter. The lights in the hallway were still off. She could hear the dryer running somewhere at the back of the house, and outside, a neighbor's car pulling into a driveway. Everything was exactly the same as it had been 30 seconds ago. The photo was taken in a hotel room. A bed beautifully made, cream duvet, dark wood headboard, the kind of room that costs $400 a night in downtown Toronto, and in the mirror's reflection, a woman, mid-30s, blonde, wearing a silk slip, smiling at herself like she had just won something. The caption read, "Feeling at home wherever he takes me, she blessed Sunday vibes." The account belonged to a woman named Talia Renford. Petra did not know that name. She did know the hotel. It was the Hazelton. She and her husband, Rowan Whitmore, had stayed there on their 10th anniversary. He had surprised her with a room upgrade and a bottle of champagne. She remembered thinking, that night, that they had built something real, that it was rare, and she was lucky. She set her phone face down on the counter. Then she picked it up again and looked at the photo once more. Then she went to put the groceries away, because the cold things needed to go in the fridge, and standing there not breathing wasn't going to change anything. She put the oat milk in the door of the fridge. She had remembered. Petra Whitmore was 38 years old. She worked as a brand communications director for a mid-sized agency in Mississauga, which meant she spent most of her days thinking about how things looked, what they implied, and what people chose to believe when given two conflicting versions of the same event. She was good at her job. She had been told she was calm under pressure. She had always taken that as a compliment. That night she did not sleep. She lay next to Rowan, listening to him breathe, and thought about the way Talia Renford smiled in that mirror. Not a candid smile, not a private one. A performed smile. The kind you do when you know someone else is eventually going to see it. She thought about that a lot. Rowan Whitmore was the kind of man people described as dependable. He was 41, a project manager at a civil engineering firm in Burlington, and he had a reputation for being steady. The person who stayed calm when things got complicated, who didn't raise his voice, who followed through. He coached their son's hockey team on Saturday mornings. He made coffee before Petra woke up. He called his mother every Sunday. He was also, as Petra would come to understand over the following weeks, exceptionally good at maintaining two separate calendars. She didn't confront him. Not yet. She was 48 hours into knowing, still in the phase where the information sits in your body like something foreign, and you're not sure yet what it's going to do. Instead, she did what she knew how to do. She researched. Talia Renford was not difficult to find. Her Instagram was public, 42,000 followers, a carefully curated grid of travel photos, wellness content, and what appeared to be a lifestyle brand built around the idea that she had excellent taste. She lived in Toronto's West End. She was a freelance content creator. She was, based on her tagged locations, a frequent visitor to a very specific set of restaurants. Places Rowan had told Petra he had been taking clients to for the past year. Petra had been to exactly none of those restaurants. She made a spreadsheet. She couldn't help it. It was a habit from work, this need to organize information before drawing conclusions. She cross-referenced dates. She matched hotel check-ins from Talia's stories against nights. Rowan had told her he was away for work. A conference in Ottawa, a site visit in Kitchener, a weekend strategy retreat near Collingwood. Every date aligned with something. It had been going on for at least 14 months. She sat with the spreadsheet open on her laptop at the kitchen table, her coffee going cold beside her, their daughter Emmy in the next room watching a show, and she felt something shift. Not dramatically, not with any noise, just a quiet recalibration. The kind that happens when you understand that what you thought was the ground beneath your feet was actually something much less stable. Emmy was 9. She had Rowan's dark eyes and Petra's stubbornness. And she had a hamster named Archie, and a best friend named Sue Jin, and a deep and abiding love for anything involving craft supplies. She had started a new book series she couldn't stop talking about. She was in the middle of everything good that childhood is, and Petra was not willing to upend that until she knew exactly what she was doing and why. That distinction mattered. Not acting out of pain, acting out of clarity. She didn't say anything to Rowan. She smiled at dinner. She asked about his day. She listened to him talk about a drainage issue at a commercial site in Hamilton, and she thought, I know things about your life that you don't know I know. It was a strange feeling, not power exactly, more like standing in a room a beat before everyone else notices the lights have gone out. The discovery that changed everything happened on a Saturday in October. Rowan had taken Emmy to her skating lesson. He did that every week, the one parental duty he was genuinely consistent about, and Petra had always appreciated it. That morning, while the house was quiet and the maple in the backyard had gone the color of rust, her phone buzzed with a new tag. Talia Renford again. This time the story was different. The photo was her kitchen, or what had been, until about 40 seconds ago, a completely familiar kitchen. The white subway tile, the brass hardware, the small Norfolk pine that Petra had bought at the garden center in September and put on the windowsill to see if she could keep it alive through winter. Talia Renford was standing in front of Petra's kitchen window, holding a mug, smiling that same mirror smile. The caption said, "Sunday mornings are better when they feel like home." Petra read it twice. Then she set her phone down. Then she picked it up and read it once more, just to be certain she had not imagined it. She had not imagined it. Talia Renford had come into her house, the house where Emmy slept, the house where Archie the hamster lived in a cage on the dresser, and there were still crayon marks on the doorframe of the laundry room from when Emmy was 4 and experimenting. She had stood in Petra's kitchen, in front of Petra's windowsill plant, and posted it publicly with a tag. Not an accident, not a mistake, a message. And Petra, who had spent 2 months being quiet and methodical and careful, who had researched and documented and made spreadsheets and said nothing, felt for the first time something settle into place that was not grief at all. It was clarity. She called her sister Bridget that afternoon, not to cry, though she did, a little, in the first 5 minutes, but mostly to think out loud. Bridget was 4 years older and lived in Calgary and worked in commercial real estate and had absolutely no patience for ambiguity. She listened, and when Petra finished, she said, "What are you going to do about it?" Not "I'm so sorry," though she said that too. But the first thing, the real thing, was the question. Petra said she didn't know yet. Bridget said, "Yes, you do. You're just waiting until you're sure you won't regret it." That was true. She waited 3 more days. Petra had a contact. His name was Kwame Osiedu, and he ran a boutique digital advertising firm in downtown Toronto that she had worked with twice in her career. They were friendly in the way of people who had mutual respect and occasionally grabbed coffee when they were in the same neighborhood. He specialized in hyper-targeted digital campaigns, transit ads, digital billboards, geo-fenced online placements, the kind of advertising that put a specific message in front of a specific audience at a specific location. She called him on a Wednesday morning from her car in the parking garage at work. She explained what she wanted to do. There was a pause on the line. Then Kwame said, "You're not asking me to do anything illegal." "No," she said. "And this is your real name, your money, and your decision." "Yes." Another pause. Then, "Okay, what's your budget?" What Petra had found, after 2 evenings of research, was that Talia Renford's Instagram presence was built partly on a modest brand partnership with a travel and lifestyle PR company. One of that company's clients ran regular digital billboard advertising in Toronto, rotating slots on LED boards near King and Spadina, near Queen West, along the Gardiner corridor. The same board that Talia's lifestyle content was occasionally promoted on, through a shared placement block. The slot directly below that placement was available for 72 hours. Starting Friday evening, Petra bought it. The creative was simple. She had made it herself at 11 o'clock at night, in the same kitchen Talia had photographed on her laptop. A clean white background, black text, very large, and at the bottom in smaller text the address. It said, "Took the photo in this house. This is our family home. 37 Elmwood Crescent, Oakville, the wife knows. Nothing else, no names, no photos, no accusations about what specifically had happened. Just the fact, placed directly beneath the aspirational lifestyle content of a woman who had made the mistake of geotagging Petra's kitchen window. Kwame ran it starting at 6 p.m. on Friday. By Saturday morning, it had been photographed by at least 40 different people on the street. By Saturday afternoon, it had been posted to Twitter, to Reddit, and to 3 separate Facebook groups dedicated to Toronto neighborhood gossip. Someone on a local parenting forum asked if anyone else had seen the billboard near King and Spadina. A journalist who covered digital culture for a Toronto media outlet sent an email to a general contact form Petra had set up specifically for this purpose. She had anticipated that, had thought it through, and the email asked simply, "Is this real? Can you speak to us?" She did not respond to the journalist. Not yet. She was at Emmy's skating lesson when the billboard went up. She sat in the rink watching her daughter skate backwards across the ice, red-cheeked and concentrating, and she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not triumph, not anger. Something quieter. She had been heard, not by Rowan, not by Talia Renford, by the city. By strangers who had nothing to do with any of it, who had walked past a billboard on their way to dinner and understood immediately what it meant. There is something clarifying about that. Being seen, even anonymously. Having the truth exist in the world outside your own head. Rowan found out on Saturday night. He came home from watching a game at a friend's place and he was still in his jacket, keys in his hand, when he walked into the kitchen and looked at Petra standing at the counter. Something in her expression must have told him. He said, "What did you do?" She had thought about this moment for 3 days. She had prepared for it. She had decided she would not perform, she would not cry, she would not raise her voice. She said, "I put up an ad." He looked at her for a long moment. His face cycled through something she didn't fully catalog. Then he said, "You can't just." She posted a photo of our kitchen, Rowan, while Emmy was at her lesson, in our house. He stopped. He sat down, on the chair by the back door, still in his jacket, keys still in his hand. He put his face in his hands, not the gesture of a man who had been caught, but of a man who finally understood the shape of the thing he had done. "How long have you known?" he said. 2 months, she said. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside it was raining. She could hear the patter of it on the deck, the soft knock of a branch against the fence in the wind. Emmy was asleep upstairs. She had gone to bed at 8:30 after 2 episodes of her show, hugging Petra for longer than usual at the door. Kids know things, not the facts, but the feeling. Emmy had been a little more physically affectionate in the past few weeks, the way children get when they sense that something in the adult world has become uncertain. Petra was going to protect her from as much of this as she could. She was also going to be honest with her, in the age-appropriate way, when the time came. That was non-negotiable. Emmy had a right to understand what had happened in her home, not the adult version, but her version. She was 9 years old. She deserved the truth shaped for her, not lies shaped for everyone else's comfort. Rowan said, "I'm sorry." She nodded. She believed him. She also knew that sorry was not a plan. She said, "I've already spoken to a lawyer." He looked up. She had. A family lawyer in Mississauga, named Constance Bell, whom her colleague had recommended, and who had been calm and direct and exactly what Petra needed in a room. The consultation had been 2 weeks earlier. Petra had brought the spreadsheet. "I'm not making any decisions tonight," Petra said. "But you should know where things stand." He asked about Emmy. Good, that was the right question. Whatever else he had done, he loved their daughter genuinely, and that was a fact she was going to hold on to for what came next, because Emmy needed her father to remain present, even when everything else was being renegotiated. "Emmy is fine," Petra said. "She's going to stay fine. That's the only thing that's not up for discussion." The story got bigger before it got quieter, the way these things do. Talia Renford went private on Instagram on Sunday morning, and then deleted her account entirely by Sunday afternoon. Her lifestyle brand's website went offline. The PR company she worked with posted a boilerplate statement about her being a freelance collaborator with no formal affiliation, which was the corporate equivalent of stepping away slowly and hoping no one noticed. Someone identified the address on the billboard, and there was, briefly, a small amount of harassment of the wrong Elmwood Crescent in Oakville. A different street entirely, before someone corrected the thread and the attention moved on to other things, as internet attention does. A women's interest podcast that Petra had never heard of asked her for an interview. She declined. An essay went up on a Canadian feminist blog about the Billboard, framing it as a form of analog resistance in a digital age, which made Petra laugh out loud in her car on the way to work. She wasn't resisting anything, she had simply responded in the language that had been used against her. Digital advertising. She used it at work every day. Kwame texted her on Sunday afternoon. "You okay?" She texted back. "Yes, thank you," he replied. Ballsy. For the record. She put her phone in her bag and went to pick Emmy up from Sujin's birthday party, where there had apparently been a piñata situation that required some explanation. Emmy got into the car with blue sugar on her chin and a loot bag, and immediately began describing the piñata in forensic detail, and Petra drove north on the QEW with the sun, going sideways through the windows, and listened to every word. She did not know yet what her marriage was going to look like in 6 months. She didn't know what conversations she and Rowan still needed to have, or how Emmy was going to process all of it when the full shape of it was finally given to her. She didn't know whether the hurt was going to get worse before it got better, or whether there was going to be a version of their family that was intact in a different way than it had been before. She knew some things, though. She knew that she had not gone quiet, that when something had been done in the dark and then brought into her home, made casual and posted publicly, she had answered publicly. Not with cruelty, with information. She knew that the woman who had smiled in her kitchen mirror had understood by Sunday that there were consequences for the things you choose to do and document. She knew that Emmy had said at dinner the previous week, in the way that children say important things, offhand between bites, "Mom, I think you're really brave." Petra had asked why, and Emmy had shrugged and said she didn't know, she just thought so. She had cried in the bathroom later. Not sad crying. The other kind. She knew, also, that Rowan had moved to the guest room without being asked, and that he had not argued with her about the lawyer, and that he had shown up for Emmy's skating lesson on Saturday morning, exactly as he always did, and that Emmy had come home talking about how he had finally landed a backwards crossover without falling, and that small ordinary continuities mattered, that they were, in fact, the whole point. She knew that the Billboard had come down on Monday morning after its 72-hour run. The slot had expired. The message had done what it needed to do. She knew that she was not done grieving, that it would come in waves, the way it always does, that some mornings she would wake up, and the first thought would be something ordinary. Coffee, the weather, the meeting at 10, and then the second thought would be the truth of what had happened, and it would land again, fresh. But she also knew what she had not known. The night she stood in her kitchen with her coat still on, holding the groceries, looking at her phone, that she was not the kind of woman who went quiet when her life was rearranged without her consent. She was the kind of woman who made a spreadsheet, who called her sister, who went to see a lawyer and brought documentation, who stood in a parking garage and made a phone call, calm and clear-headed, and said, "I know what I want to do. Can you help me do it?" She was the kind of woman who had remembered to buy the oat milk. The road back from something like this is not a single dramatic moment. It is not a billboard or a confrontation or a viral story shared by strangers on a Toronto street. Those things happen, and they matter, and they are real. But they are not the work. The work is Emmy at the kitchen table doing her homework, asking how to spell Mediterranean. The work is a phone call with Constance Bell on a Thursday afternoon, going over options with the kind of neutral professionalism that makes a painful process feel navigable. The work is Petra herself, sitting in her car in the parking garage for 5 minutes before going into the office, just breathing, just being a person who is allowed to have a hard time and still function. The work is knowing what you're not willing to lose, and knowing, just as clearly, what you are no longer willing to accept. Petra Whitmore drove her daughter home from Sue Jin's birthday party, and her daughter talked the whole way, and the maple in the backyard had dropped most of its leaves by then, and the Norfolk pine on the kitchen windowsill was, against all odds, still alive. She had not decided yet about her marriage, but she had decided about herself. That was, she was beginning to understand the only place to start.